Declaration of Human Rights, and we have this phrase of sort of a metaphor to refer to the whole setup as a human rights family. So within it, it means with that metaphor or analogy, we can see how we can talk of parents and siblings, right? So which means the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there is that relationship, right? And under siblings, the freedom of religion is one of the siblings, right? And other freedoms, those are siblings. So the parent is what we are saying is the bigger part. But now, like I said, I won't spend much time, but just to explain who that is. That's King Sobhuza #2, right? And his mother, who was the Queen Mother. His mother was the Queen Mother, right? So that's an interesting maybe piece of history to think about. But meanwhile, maybe we may need to look at King Somhlolo's vision, just to explain it, to unpack it a bit, and I try also to put into it how it also is. I discuss it alongside nationalization of Christianity in Eswatini. So I talk about Somhlolo's vision and the nationalization of Christianity in this context. So King Sobhuza #1, like I have said, is the one who was known as Somhlolo. And he had a dream around 1839, or some say it was a vision. So now that vision is significant, very significant, but how did it go? What was the type, what type of dream did he have? So it is said that his dream was of people, foreigners, coming from outside the country. And these foreigners or these people had long hair, just like the tail of cattle, right? So it means you can see that these could be white. And some would also describe how one could see the sun through their ears. It's also a description of how maybe they are of a different race. So that's a part of the dream, but it's the center of the dream is that he dreamt that these people had, on one hand, a coin-like object, right? And then that's indilinga, because in Eswatini, money is emalangeni, and it's a name that is related to indilinga, right? And then the other object that was there was a scroll, and this scroll could be a book, a Bible, or any such. And finally, what was said about the interpretation of the dream, the end of it, was that don't choose indilinga or money. Choose the book or the Bible. So this is how the Bible came to be introduced in Eswatini eventually, because the Bible could be the Bible per se, or the Bible could also be education. Whatever, whether you want to say the Bible is education or the other way around, all the same, the missionaries and the colonialists, the whites that that he saw in the vision, are the ones who brought education, who brought also the Bible through missionary activity. So all the same, that is the vision that we see as very influential in terms of how it was interpreted by subsequent rulers in Eswatini, because Somhlolo himself was not able to live beyond the dream. He passed it on, he talked about it to his generals and all those. They knew about it, but he did not, nothing happened in his time. So after his death, now we find the people, his sons, who inherited him, the throne, taking up the dream, the vision forward. So the first thing was that King Moskwati II sent some missionaries to South Africa, to Grahamstown. I think some of you who are familiar with South Africa may know that town. That's where they got in touch with Methodist missionaries. And these became the first missionaries to come to Eswatini in 1844, just to establish maybe their missions. And then, however, we also find some problems in between, some clashes here and there because of intervention by some missionaries who were maybe meddling in politics somehow, and there was a period of some gap. But now let me rush to how this is influential, how this is important for us, this vision. You find that we find the nationalization of Christianity from that same vision, because those who came later now said and claimed to say Christianity is the national religion of Eswatini. That's what they eventually said, because they were saying the Swazis were supposed to build their nation on the Bible, right? Because they are building on the vision. So they are still also saying that. One reverend even actually said some pluralism, or that vision that he received was not his idea. It was just that he was a messenger. But otherwise, he is just a messenger and an instrument of God. But otherwise, it was meant to support Christianity, that it should be an exclusive religion in Eswatini. So that has made some to say and to claim that although Swaziland respects freedom of conscience, she does not for a moment wish to vacillate on the theistic foundation upon which the nation is built. So you can see that they don't want to compromise on that, because they thought maybe 150 years of having established an institution or missionary institution, they should not find opposing religion. They were actually saying history has taught that has taught us that different religions, opposing religions, offered at the same time to the same people, become divisive elements in society. So Swaziland does not want to entangle in bloody wars, right? So you see, already they can see some war between religions. Of course, we know theological wars are always the worst kind. You know that. But they are actually declaring that this philosophy should stand. Christianity should be the religion. But now, apart from this type of missionary Christianity that we find from the West, we also find a brand of Christianity that came from the indigenous people, and that was Zionism, that was influenced by the South African Zionism, right? And you know, Zionism, it balances between Christian religion and some elements of culture within it. So in that way, we find the king and the royal family eventually supporting it, because the colonialists were saying, let us do away with something that is the missionaries and colonialists. They wanted it to be a purely Christian, genuine Christian message, not diluted. So they thought Zionism was going to dilute the form of Christianity that they wanted preached. So in that way, the king eventually said, no, leave the Zionists to me, because they have this cultural element. I am the culture person, so leave it to me. And that in that way, the king saved Zionism in Eswatini. But that was not for without reward. Why? Because we find the king, one of the queens, the queen mothers, who was healed by the Zionists. She had an eye problem and she was healed, and she converted to the Zionist movement, right? You see royal family, queen mother, turning to Zionism, right? And then and other royal family members also chipped in under Zionism. So up to today, you would find that although the colonialist missionaries wanted to oppose maybe Zionists, and they actually called them a society of witches, right? Because they would operate at night in terms of drumming and so on at night, doing the night vigils in terms of prayer and dancing. So the whites and missionaries would say, oh, this is a society of witches. So in the end, that society of so-called witches was defended, because Zionism was adopted by the monarchy. The king and the queen are ecclesiastically speaking and administratively speaking, they are the head of the Zionist churches, group of churches. And indeed, they eventually formed the League of African Churches, where the Zionists belong. So in that way, you can see this partnership that within Christianity itself, we have divisions. And that division is very important to see about religious freedom when we see the challenges that can come from traditional ways of life. Some other Christian movements, like churches, like Methodists, Anglicans, Catholics, would feel excluded because the king would now operate under maybe or in cahoots with the Zionists. And even up to this day, the king is the patron of the Zionist Christian movement. He's the patron, and like I said, administratively, ecclesiastically, he preaches on Good Fridays. You know, Good Fridays that are done worldwide. The king will be preaching, right? Just like also traditional ceremonies that are held by the king, the Inuala, for example, the first fruits, that is held at the end of the year. Also, the Zionist priests would come and pray for the success of that session. So you see this integration, right? Does it promote religious freedom, or they are just these two only and the rest are excluded? You see this tricky situation that, yes, religious freedom could be there, but what about the role of other Christian movements and other non-Christian movements? So that's the question that will challenge all of us, even to this day. So you see this Zionist faith and reality and how maybe they formed that league of churches. And then maybe under our findings, maybe key findings, we find that one, the Constitution of Eswatini makes it clear under sections 20 and 23 that there is this non-discrimination clause that they talk about in section 20. And also in section 23, it is about this freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, and maybe of religion. So all that is contained in the Constitution. But it's one thing to have it on paper, but yet another to be able to put it into practice. So that is there. But let us see maybe what will happen. We have a historical, is another point, the historical, we have the historical preference for Christianity that I have talked about. I won't ever overemphasize it, but you see the origin of it. But my new point is this partnership has been used as a tool for, or a weapon for to consolidate power, and also to make sure that, yes, even peace, when we talk of peace, they can also build peace using that one. But it means religion is being as a tool for public control. And I think you know how maybe religion can be abused or can be used. So it's another food for thought whether we can say it is being abused or not. So other religions are not getting space, the same space as Christianity, because there is that preference for Christianity. So that's an issue of concern. And then we also find maybe alongside it that when the king presides on the Zionist sessions, strategically he knows the language to use. When he is among the Zionists, he would say, God loves you. When he is among those who are traditional, he can talk about God and Amanloti, which are the ancestors. So he knows how to balance his things. And then maybe the third point to note is that there is a tension between state and religious practices. Just as an example, we find that although there is freedom of expression, belief, and everything like that, but some tend to override certain rights. We remember the siblings to the human rights. There is the right to life. And when one family could not send their children for medication because they just said, we want to use prayer, that made it a serious offense, And the a government minister had to go there and rescue the children who were almost about to die because of a certain maybe disease that needed modern medical attention. Notwithstanding that, maybe they would also respect the use of the word. But it means that's how you can also see that although the government respects freedom of religion, right? And its related aspects towards peace building. But it also can intervene when it sees that maybe there is a compromise to fundamental rights or the human rights that will affect the other people. So this is very critical, and it means that's a positive element about what the monarchy has done or what the government has done. And then finally, on part of what I want to talk about under these elements, key elements, there's the issue of education and religion as tools for social and political control. But of course, in hindsight, we can also think and reflect whether that can work for peace building. But the bottom line is those two elements, both education and religion, can be used or abused or can be used as those tools. So you'd find that maybe in Eswatini, like I've said, the constitution actually is in use there. But in this case, we find that there is an issue of one in education where, let me just take a phrase from one educationist in Zimbabwe, R.J. Zobwo, writing in 1997 in one of his books on religion, the state ideology and education. He talked about education as live politics. So if education is live politics, look at how it can also be applied. It can also be applied in the context of Eswatini, where we find the curriculum, which the Constitution stipulated that it should be multi-faith in approach. One of these years, after 2005, when that Constitution was adopted, it was changed willy-nilly by maybe by a minister of government, after parents had just complained, and without even taking it to Parliament for revision or for what, he just gave a directive to say, we won't have multi-faith now. It will be just Bible-based education. So this is how the multi-faith system was kicked out. So all the other religions, Judaism, Islam, and others, it means they lost out on how they can also be known. You know, if we have a multi-faith approach, it means tolerance becomes higher, religious freedom, chances of religious freedom becomes become higher, just as peace building also become maybe more lucrative in that environment. So this is what happened in Eswatini, as we find maybe the dictation from the minister saying we won't find anyone teaching anything other than the biblical-based type of curriculum. So that's one indicator that shows that maybe we find politics, and it becomes a tool of control in that once we find one side, and remember this type of Christianity is a Christianity that is blended with tradition. So it's a unique type of Christianity that at the top officially is being portrayed here because it's in partnership, as I have said. But we also find, maybe I talked about Samhlolo and the importance of that dream and how people say, yes, this has always been a Christian country. So they've always tried to say this resonates with culture, with the tradition, because we also believe in a high God. Christianity also brought a high God. So the same thing, we can work together. So they have become tools, useful tools of nation building. So now, maybe before I close, I wanted to say there's one thing that I want to say about the national flag and its symbolism. The flag has three colors, right? There is a red, there is a blue, there is a yellow. The red is about the struggle in the past, right? That they had, where there was bloodshed and so on. Then the blue is for peace and stability. and the yellow is for resources. So you can see that the way in which they crafted their flag was also maybe on purpose and something that they thought would work for nation building. And then so in conclusion, we find that we can see those aspects of the blend of Christianity and Swazi traditional religious practices as important in nation building or in peace building. And we also find that the presence of the king and the presence of the king, it's a dual monarchy, so they have checks and balances. That can also bring in peace, because at times when the king overrides certain rights, the Queen Mother can come in. So that balance is also important for human dignity and human rights. Finally, that clip on that picture, that's Sobuza number 2, and there's a statement that that is put there, Angi na sitsa, which means I have no enemy. If we would critically look at that one, maybe it could be a foundation for nation building, for peace building, and for stability. I thank you.
Our other two speakers were not able to make it, so I asked Dean Getachew Asefa Woldemarian, who's here from Ethiopia, to just share a few thoughts with us. He's going to be giving his full presentation in the next session here in this room on African academic perspectives. And I just thought it would be neat to hear both from Fortune and from Getachew during this session. We were in Ethiopia with Gary Oba and his wife, and with Jeff Nelson and Janet in April of this year to have a day-long law and religion symposium at their university in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It was really a neat experience to be there with Dean Getachew, and so I wanted him to talk a little bit about that experience. So I'll just read to you briefly his bio, and then I'll ask Dean Getachew to come up and give us a few remarks, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Getachew Asefa Woldemarian is an associate professor of law at Addis Ababa University, Ethiopia. He is also the dean of the College of Law and Governance Studies at Addis Ababa University. He holds an LLB, an LLM, and a PhD in law. And his current area of academic interest includes Ethiopian and comparative constitutional law, human rights law, traditional justice systems, and law and religion. We were blessed to have Dean Getachew with us in Oxford this summer, and it was wonderful to have him there. So I'm going to turn the time over to Getachew. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. So I think I'm very happy to have obtained this opportunity to give you the good news about what we are trying to do at the law school, College of Law of Addis Ababa University, in relation to law and religion studies. So as Hannah said, we have been working with the ACLERS for realizing a number of things, which I will outline in a bit. I first came in contact with ACLERS and the African Consortium on Law and Religion Studies in 2015 when I was an interim dean at the College of Law. I took part in the Namibia consortium of African Consortium on Law and Religion Studies, and we hosted the African Consortium on Law and Religion Studies in 2016 in Addis Ababa. So I wasn't the interim dean at that point, but my successor hosted the African Consortium on Law and Religion Studies at Addis Ababa. And we continued to work with Brigham University's ACLERS on primarily achieving two things. One is to develop a course on law and religion studies at the College of Law. So we plan to do two things. One is to introduce a course at undergraduate level, and also an elective course at the master's level. And we hope to expand on this and create a concentration area in which students can specialize at the LLM level. In order to do that, we have been collaborating with ECLERS. We had signed memorandum of understanding in April this year when we held a conference on two important topics relating to what we plan to do. One is discussion on the African conception of human dignity, which was based on the book that was published by ECLERS. And in fact, that I think helped as or served as a forum for launching that book, which was just published a month before or a few months before we held that conference. So we discussed with scholars from ECLERS and Professor Sharfs, Professor Durham, and the scholars from Nigeria, Kenya, who discussed chapters from the book and gave us insight on important issues, which is one of the things that once put in place our efforts will plan to do. So as I said, the first one is developing course and curriculum for law and religion studies. But the second and probably most important one is to open a center on law and religion studies at the College of Law of Addis Ababa University. And the conference also gave us a very useful insight on methodological issues. So we discussed also methodological issues, both for developing the course, the curriculum, as well as to travel through the bureaucracy of the university in how to get to agree. University leaders who might find law and religion wary, a little bit wary about the notion, without having understood it. So we obtained lessons and insights from those who have done it, including ECLERS and a university in Nigeria that has established Law and Religion Studies Center at its law school. So that insight was very useful. We are at a very advanced stage now working on how to develop the course as well as structure the center within the framework of the College of Law. And probably I think it's important to note at this point that Addis Ababa University at the moment is undergoing structural reform because it has granted an autonomy from government by statute to be more autonomous than it used to be, which means that it will be able to decide on academic as well as resource, human resource, financial resource matters on its own without depending on the government structure, so free from Ministry of Finance's bureaucracy on financial issues, and to structure the program and also decide on student admission, which is until now decided by the government. So the government provides the number of students for the university by placement. This autonomy will enable Addis Ababa University to select and admit its own students based on its own criteria. And that is going to be very helpful and useful also for what we are trying to do. So I think we are undertaking all those things, and members of the audience can look out for conferences and symposiums that we will be organizing under the new center that will open in a few months' time. As Hannah said, I also took part as part of this initiative in the Oxford Young Scholars Fellowship, although I'm not that young. I'm young in terms of the new initiatives that we are going to undertake. So to get a first-hand knowledge and insight on how the course is to be delivered, to be taught, the different courses that we'll design. It was a very helpful experience. 3-week intensive course on religion and rule of law, which is through which we benefited from very well-known scholars coming from different parts of the world, specializing in the various parts of the casebooks materials, and that was very, very helpful. and we hope to involve some more faculty that will create a critical mass for undertaking what we plan to do. I think I'm happy for the opportunity to say about these things, and looking forward to more works and collaboration with ECLERS. We are grateful for the opportunity so far, and we hope to continue to benefit from your resources and support. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fortune, and thank you, Getachew. I appreciate your presentations. We have about 15 minutes left for questions if you'd like to engage our two speakers. After that, there'll be a 15-minute break until 11:30, and then the next session in this room will also be on Africa. So are there any questions for our speakers? Yeah, right down here in front. Thank you. Could you please say your name and where you're from?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Neo from the National University of Singapore. I have a question to both speakers. Thank you so much for your presentations. It was really interesting. For Professor Fortune, I was wondering if you could elaborate on what you mean by biblical education. Exactly what goes into the education that you said is biblical based. And so secondly, if you don't mind, you talked about religion being a tool for public control. So besides education and medical treatment, where are there other additional points of conflict between the state and religious organizations in Eswatini? And to Professor Getachew, I thought it was really interesting. I looked at your bio and I saw that you had a book on legal pluralism in Ethiopia. If you don't mind, could you perhaps provide maybe some of the key points that arose from legal pluralism? Because I see legal pluralism as if you like, a positive claim of religion on including some of customary religions, right, on the state. So what are some of the key points of legal pluralism in Ethiopia, and where are some of the points of conflict? So thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions. I will take the first one on the biblical-based curriculum. Yes, what happened is maybe after 2005, the country had a constitution, and this constitution stipulated that the type of education that they would offer in Eswatini was such that from primary school and in secondary schools, they would offer a multi-faith approach where all religions, different religions, are taught to students or to pupils, right, without any reservations. Now, with this U-turn that happened a few years ago, I think it's 2 years, around 2017, 2018, they say after some complaints from parents, because what was happening is since 2005, it seems as if they were not seeing much interest from some parents, not all, from some parents, because you remember the majority are Christian, right? So it means the Muslims are there, the Baha'is are there, the Rastas are there, but the percentage, they estimate it at about 1% or 2%. So the rest, it could be their Christian Kum traditionalists. Like I said, at times you don't see the difference, the dividing line between those who are into this and that may be very difficult to define. But maybe of interest to note is that one of the interviewees who was on the mission to go and teach people about and to popularize the multi-faith approach, at one point in time was approached by one of, because that person happened to be in a committee, a nationally commissioned committee to go around the country and try to bring awareness that this is a good syllabus, a good curriculum to follow, right? So she actually said she had problems in that one of the people who knew her to be a wife to a reverend said, "Oh, so you are behind the invitation of demons into this country. Oh, you are the one who is behind it. Oh, you're one of them." So it's as if anything outside Christianity becomes demonic. So you can see the intolerance that could be there because of this excessive element of trying to be exclusively Christian-oriented or Christocentric. So that's one aspect. And it means the government now, in the end, without even taking the matter to a formal discussion and debate in Parliament to see the way forward, the minister just took it upon himself and implemented, gave a directive and said, from now onwards, we are teaching a Bible-based curriculum, which means it's a Bible only in primary and secondary. But in university, yes, we are teaching. For example, myself, I am teaching world religions. It's there in the university. University are not an issue here, but it's the primary and secondary. And you know, many years are spent by students or by peoples in primary and secondary education. So if they are taught one thing, one type of orientation, it means they are not given this wider horizon of looking at the diversity that the world has become in terms of religious plurality. So it means that those exclusive tendencies are a way in which we would say they are ideologically charged and they are meant to make Swaziland a Christian country, but it is not constitutionally because it is a secular state and it is not a Christian state. But those who are in defense of that position want to give this impression that this is a Christian state. And the type of Christianity I told you, it is a Christianity where we find Zionists at the center of it, and the Catholics are not even invited in some of these sessions, or maybe even if they are invited, because they are not given space or space as comparatively with the Zionists. It means in terms of seats, you would find that the Zionist priests would have the privilege of sitting somewhere, and then these other ones are the other. So it means in the end, they tend not to attend in their numbers, whereas the Zionists will go in their numbers, and the partnership continues. So it means in terms of curriculum, I think I have done justice on that one, unless you want more flesh on that one. So like I said, my issue is it was not the parliament declaring it, but it was just a minister just giving a directive to say, and it has worked, and it has been like that. It means the king or whoever, because these are in power, it means they said it's enough, it's okay. That's what it means. And then your other question was on the conflict that, yes, we find the tools being used, religion being used as tools for political or social control and so on. Yes, I talked about education somehow, and I won't repeat on that one because it feeds into the explanation that I have given about the curriculum, that it becomes a tool. And then the other side becomes maybe something that I talked about as, yes, you said beyond the medical thing. Then what else? What are the other areas? Okay, the other areas that we find very critical is even about the media, use of the media, all right? The media, there is preference, once again, to, yes, the Christian side of it and the type of Christianity I've told you, and also those that are inclined to traditional activities, customary activities, the festivals, they are covered in full, but the activities of the other, I think they tend also to say, maybe even if they are invited, they say we won't attend because they are not, it's as if they are not recognized. Their presence is not even there. I also have gathered that there is sort of this, from the Christian fraternity, they talk of the interfaith platform, right? But it is not as effective as it should be, because, like I said, the other players, the other religions are in the minority, and they also tend to say, because they don't see us on an equal footing, we will also just take a low profile. And in the end, it means their rights are also maybe somehow not represented in full. So de jure, yes, the Constitution says there is religious freedom, but de facto, you would find that the situation may not be that. For example, let me say on media, just to also illustrate, airplay, free airplay on radio, right? Eswatini Broadcasting Services, right? It has been offered to the Christian fraternity, like I said, this one, and then not to other. And when the others questioned it, they said, we have been told not to just open it up to anyone. So it means that also shows maybe an issue of media concern, and it's an important tool. That's why we are saying it's a tool. So it's ideologically charged. You know, it's not neutral. It's not something that you would take for granted. Right, thank you.
Okay. Is it working? Thank you. Thank you for the question. So just very briefly, the legal pluralism in Ethiopia is about state law and non-state law, the formal law enacted by the state, and the informal law that exists within the society. So we have more than 80 ethno-cultural communities in Ethiopia, each of which has its own customary or traditional mechanisms of dispute resolution and administration. But on the other hand, we have the formal state, which basically works on the basis of laws that are crafted on the basis of Western ideas of law, and that started to fully take position in Ethiopia during the 1950s and 60s, when Emperor Haile Selassie decided to modernize the laws by following the European legal system, basically the French legal system, to codify laws. So 6 codes were enacted during that decade, including the civil code, criminal code, commercial code, and other codes, also the procedural codes, and outlawed the traditional system by virtue of the operation of the law. So in civil matters, traditional civil way of dealing with disputes was outlawed, specifically by the civil code. And the idea was that modern economy, modern society must be governed by codified modern laws and not traditional laws. But in reality, that does not work. As you would know, the traditional legal system is still very active in the society, although at the state and urban areas you have the modern laws and courts in operation, but most of the disputes in the society are resolved through traditional dispute resolution mechanisms. And following that, the 1995 Constitution, which I'll be speaking about later, recognizes customary and religious laws and courts in family and personal matters, not in other areas, but in family and personal matters for consenting disputants that want to submit to the jurisdiction of courts and laws on the basis of tradition and religion. They can use these courts. So the precondition is that both parties must consent to be adjudicated by those platforms. And this is essentially for the Sharia legal system. And that is essentially the formal policy regarding legal pluralism. And the book that you referred to is an open access book in which we discussed all these traditional systems and how they resolve disputes.
All right, are there any other questions? Yes, right here.
Very briefly, what hopes do you have for the center that's going to be established at the
Yeah,
university? Do you think it will have a regional impact? You've been a part of ACLRS. I mean, you know, there's this incredible dynamic that's happening, but how do you hope things will be changed because of the center there in Addis Ababa?
Yes, thank you very much. I actually should have mentioned that. So the idea and the intention we have is to create a center that not only serves Ethiopia, but also the region, which is very much interconnected. The people in the region are very much interconnected. You find linguistic communities or cultural communities traversing borders. So there are lots of similarities and in religious-wise and linguistic-wise. And we want to create a center that caters for all, at least the East African region. And we believe that this is going to be the first of its kind in what it's going to be. And that is the plan we have to look at the broader sub-region and not only Ethiopia.
And also, if I could just add, you know, since Addis is the home of the African Union, it's also a very strategic place for them to have the Center for Law and Religion. So, well, please join me in giving our panelists a round of applause. Thank you.